I love that voice. This meeting is being recorded. Welcome. This is Kenny and
Kenny squared.
with the Sports on the Positive Tip podcast. And yes, we are being recorded so that you can see this anytime you want to see this. So Kenny, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm actually not that tired. I guess having Father's Day kind of helps that, but
Yeah,
it's been
yeah.
it's been a fun week, that's for sure.
Well, that's really good. And happy Father's Day. Glad you had a great Father's Day. Let's jump right into the NBA though. Oh my gosh. These semifinal series were unbelievable, particularly in the Eastern Conference. So let's start with Sixers Hawks, and we'll jump into Bucks and the Nets in a second. I don't know why she said that again, but anyway, um, let's start with the Sixers and Hawks, and then we'll jump into Bucks Nets because there's a lot, and then we'll also jump into the West. But the Eastern ones were just unbelievable. So Hawks and Sixers, what was some of your thoughts?
Well, I have to give credit where credit's due. Trey Young, I think, is now kind of shown that he's one of the budding stars in the league. Um, I think that a lot of people will focus more on the Sixers, and I'll get to that in a sec. But I think a few guys that are very underrated there. I hate saying it because of the former Nick aspect. Gallinari has been, I think, a very nice piece to that Hawks team.
You can still
Um,
play, yeah, yeah,
yeah. Also, Clint Capella is one of
yeah,
those guys that I didn't really like. I thought, oh, he's okay, but I think he's really stepped up big there. And
yeah.
also, I can't underestimate how much the head coaching has been, because the Hawks were a team looking like a lottery team, and then all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden the head coaching changed, and they I'd have to look. I think they have one of the top four records in the NBA once they fired their head coach. So
Yeah,
it's
McMillan
it's
didn't
been a
want the
while.
job because that was his friend, that brought him in
Yeah.
as a coach. So he really didn't want the job, but yeah, man, the coaching has been phenomenal.
Yeah. But also the Sixers, they blew leads of 26 points. They've blown leads of 18. Doc Rivers is starting to have that rep of a guy that can't hold any kind of playoff lead. But I think also the biggest thing, and we'll talk about the Nets. The Nets aren't at a point where they're like, man, we should just blow it up. I think that the Sixers might be. Ben Simmons took, I believe it was 3 shots in all 7 games in the fourth quarter. The guy shot worse from the free throw line than Shaq did in the playoffs. So I think
Wow.
it's just a really, really yeah. So I think the biggest thing is Ben Simmons. He could probably thrive on certain teams, but I feel like the Sixers isn't the right team for him. I think he needs a team where he can go into the lane because the Sixers, their offense goes around Joel Embiid. So Simmons can't really drive in because Embiid is in there and he's such a force down there. Put him on a team with a lot of perimeter shooters. This is not the best comparison, but say a team like Golden State, or even honestly this would be crazy if they did it, but a team like the Nets, where you have a lot of perimeter shooters. I think it could work for him, but sometimes, especially now you look at it, I forgot exactly the number. There's a lot of teams that have made the conference finals since the last time the Sixers have. The Hawks have made the conference finals twice since they drafted Embiid. The trust the process thing, it's been a very, very long process. I don't know if it's about still having that patience, but also you look at it. Would they beat the Nets in a 7 game series? I don't know.
No,
I don't know
no.
if they would beat the Bucks either. So I'm hoping that the Sixers will look at this and maybe they say, let's kind of take a different approach. They're not going to fire Doc Rivers after a year, but I think Ben Simmons is probably going to be one of those guys that's on the market. Maybe the Knicks, but I
Yeah,
don't know if they would do that either.
yeah. You summed it up great. The only couple quick things I'll add is blowing that 26-point lead with 2 minutes left in the third quarter. I mean, championship teams can't let that happen. And Ben Simmons, that was just so tough to watch. I felt so bad for him, and because and I'm sure you saw last night, I guess it was about 2 or 3 minutes left, and he had an open dunk, and he didn't even want to take that. And it was just, he went from being one of the better players in the league to just, I mean, to me, it seems like it happened really quick, but I agree. I think a change of scenery is probably best for him to get him to restart. And that probably isn't the team for him, but the Sixers have work to do. I couldn't put my finger on through that whole series what it was that team was lacking. They had like JJ Redick. I think even last year. I don't remember if JJ Redick was in last year, but they had players that could spread the floor a little bit, so that you're right. Simmons used to could go in. Now it's like, they're all kind of clogged in there. It's just odd. And some of these really, they've got some really talented young players coming off the bench. This Shake Milton and the other two kids that were in there were really, really good. A lot of talent, but they just seemed like they weren't ready for this series. It's almost like the Hawks snuck up on not only the Knicks but also on the Sixers. Even though this went 7 games, I never got the feeling that they were totally shutting the Hawks down. The games they won were pretty close. I think they won one by 11, right? But the other games were pretty close. And yeah, Trae Young, man, he's unbelievable. This was like an NBA Finals series, and we discussed this several weeks ago, that if the Nets got into it, we were concerned about, we had that discussion about why we wouldn't like the Nets or root for them. I was rooting for them here. And, I just wondered, we wondered both, how would the Nets react getting into a long 7-game, 6-7-game series with a team like the Bucks. I think that's who we actually said. And then they wound up playing the Bucks, and it's a grind out series. And it just seems like a long time ago that those first 2 games were just blowouts. Didn't they win game 2 by like 39 points or something like that? How did the Bucks turn this around?
Everyone's going to point to health. James Harden getting hurt, I think, was a big factor. But also, I'm just going to read this off. Listen to the amount of points that the Nets scored from game 3 on. 83, 96, 114, 89, and then the 111 in overtime.
Was that defense? Was that defense, you think, by the Bucks?
I think part of that was their defense. I still didn't kind of in the same way that you were talking about the Sixers. I never really felt like Giannis ran away with this, but he still averaged 30 points a game, averaged 12 rebounds, almost 13. So maybe he just kind of did his thing there. But also, I love how the NBA can be a game of inches. Kevin Durant's 2-pointer to send it to overtime was so close. But I think also I'd heard that apparently during games, Kevin Durant wears a size 18, but in real life, he wears a size 17. And they say the difference could have been the difference between him making that a 3 versus a 2. Just kind of interesting.
That is interesting. Wow. I never heard that.
But I think also Milwaukee kind of figured out the Nets a little bit. And while you can never really fully shut down a guy like Kevin Durant, you shut down some of the other pieces like Jeff Green. When he was going off, the Nets were fine. But really, they didn't get much from James Harden, even when he was back. Harden, you could tell, wasn't healthy. And
wasn't healthy. Yeah.
And they said afterwards that he had a grade 2 hamstring strain, which I know a different sport, but baseball, you're usually out for at least a month or so.
Yeah.
So, and I think overall with the Nets, they'll say that, well, if we had Kyrie healthy, if we had James Harden healthy, they would have been fine. Because you could also tell both of these teams were completely exhausted. I love when they showed the timeouts with Giannis exhausted, Kevin Durant exhausted.
They
Great
left
series
it
though.
all on the court. It was a great series. I mean, Durant showed that, even as he's on the back end of his career, he showed that he's just still not just one of the best players today, one of the better players of all time. I think that was just a historic performance, both those games. And you're right, the exhaustion. I mean, you look at his last shot; it didn't even hit the rim. Because
Yeah.
he just didn't have any legs anymore. He was shot. I mean, you couldn't blame him. I mean, he did everything he possibly could. Kyrie getting hurt was a big deal. Harden playing hurt, certainly was a big deal. The Nets didn't get, the help from those other players that they had before. Joe Harris didn't do well. Claxton, none of these guys came off the bench and played, meaningful minutes. Only Bruce Brown was the only one that seemed to, he kept hitting those jumpers right there in the paint. But I mean, listen, the Nets, I think health is a thing, but Durant and Irving, they just never seemed healthy all year long. And that's why I said, several weeks back, that if they get into a grind out series with any one of these Eastern teams, particularly the Bucks, it's going to be hard for them to win it. I mean, they just hadn't had any sustainable record of them playing together and staying healthy. So maybe next year. I mean, they're all still in their prime. I mean, Irving, he's been playing a long time, but he came into the league at 19 years old, so he's still pretty young. But my God, Kyrie misses games for just the drop of a hat. I mean, and I got to hand it to Harden. He gave it all he got. He tried to play. You could tell he was still hurt, and I mean, and Durant was finally healthy, but he didn't really have the help,
Yeah.
I
And that's the thing. Like these
yeah,
guys stay healthy, they'll be a favorite next year easily.
they will be. They will be. So who do you like with Bucks Hawks?
I think I'm going with the Bucks. I don't know if I flat out said this, but I definitely like going into the playoffs. I think I did say I wanted the Bucks. I don't know. It's hard for me to go against Trae Young after all he's done so far, but I don't know. I feel like this is going to be this might be the series that we finally see what Giannis can actually do.
All right.
We will see.
Yeah, I'm going Bucks too, but I gotta tell you, man, that Hawks team is just, and this is without Bogey. He did nothing in most of this series against the Sixers, and they still held on. It'll be a good series. I would say Bucks in 6 or 7. But that's going to be a long series. So let's talk about the West. Since we last talked, yeah, the Suns got to the conference finals. I mean, they're just they're tough, man. And how about the Clippers though? Let's show them a little bit of love here, because they took out the number 1 seed without their best player. What were some of your thoughts on the Western Conference series?
Yeah, I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. The fact that they were able to win without Kawhi Leonard there, and also who knows when he's coming back, I think is a big deal. But something I had watched a video earlier, and I kind of didn't think about it. Maybe the X factor there is their head coach, Ty Lue. Did you know that Ty Lue is 12-1 in series clinching games?
Didn't know that. Wow.
He also apparently has the 3rd best record of any NBA coach ever.
Wow.
So, and I was always kind of, Ty Lue's okay, because it's LeBron's team and all, but maybe he deserves a lot more love than people are giving him. And the Clippers have never made even the Western Conference Finals, let alone the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
So if they can make it, I think it'll be cool. Really, regardless, I had seen this stat earlier. So the last time any of the 4 remaining teams have been to the NBA Finals, Suns 1993, Hawks 1974, Bucks 1974, Hawks 1961, and then the Clippers never. So whoever wins it, it's going to
Wow.
be the first time in a while. Um,
Wow. Wow.
but yeah, I think first of all, if the Clippers have any shot of beating the Suns, Kawhi has to be healthy and not like just on the court. He has to be like 100%.
Yeah.
This Suns team is on an absolute roll. Devin Booker might have had his signature game, 40-point triple double. But yeah, like I think what the Clippers did, they're the first team ever to overcome 2 0-2 deficits in a single playoff series, which to
Mhm.
me shows like that resiliency. They were trailing in a lot of games and then came back. Even yesterday, they were trailing by 10 with about 2 minutes left. Most teams will just mail it in. They got it within 2 before they couldn't really complete the comeback. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
this team
Yeah.
seems different this year. I'm not ready to say that
Yeah.
they're going to beat the Suns,
Yeah.
but they're a different team.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. And taking out Utah without Kawhi Leonard, I thought was just unbelievable. I hadn't thought about Ty Lue. I think that's a great point. He's definitely an underrated coach. I mean, I love when coaches can prove they can do something in two different places, and he's certainly proving that now, getting his team to the conference finals. I had thought the Hawks had never been to the finals. I didn't realize that had to be the St. Louis Hawks, I guess,
Yeah.
1961. And the Bucks, 1974. That's so hard to believe because I don't remember a sustained period that the Bucks were a bad team. Seems like they've always had good teams. In like the 90s, they had Ray Allen and Big Dog Robinson, Glenn Robinson. It seems like they were always like in the conference finals, but they never seemed to get over the hump. I remember even in the 80s, they had Bob Lanier and they had some really good players, Junior Bridgman. That's a Marcus Johnson. It's just hard to believe that they haven't been to the finals since '74. That was probably Kareem's last year there, or one of his last years there, 1974. That's just crazy. So yeah, I agree. It's almost doesn't matter at this point. You like to see any of these teams in. I am liking the Suns. And here's why. I mean, we talked about the Suns for a while, but how they swept Denver. And I think I sent this to you. There was only a 5-game difference or a 4-game difference between Denver and, I want to say that Denver won 47 games, the Suns won 51. It was something like that in the regular season. So there
Yeah.
wasn't, for them to go out and sweep them, and Jokic, I just thought, you can't get thrown out of, any game in the playoffs when you're the star player like that, let alone a game where you might go home. But I just thought that, man, that was either some good planning or great coaching, which I think they're getting. But Chris Paul, who, definitely let's hope he's healthy and he plays in this series. I think he will. But I got to go with the Suns over the Clippers, and I'm thinking the Bucks. So Bucks Suns, I think, would be a great finals.
Yeah. I think a finals appearance for Chris Paul would be like, I don't think many people think that he's not a Hall of Famer. He wins a title though, he'll definitely be.
Yeah, yeah,
Giannis is only right now one of only 3 players to have 2 MVPs and 0 rings.
yeah,
So
yeah,
he's got a lot to fight for there.
yeah,
I would love the Suns and the Bucks too.
yeah,
I would
yeah,
also love the Clippers, but also like for me, Kawhi Leonard's been in the finals a lot. Like we've seen him in that stage. I would rather see somebody else there, but also if he does it with 3 guys, with 3 different teams, people will start talking about him like, oh well,
the
maybe he
all-time
can kind of
great.
go wherever. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, with the all-time greats. All right, so we've got our predictions. We'll talk more next week. We'll be well into the conference finals here. It was great hearing Marv Albert call the game on Saturday night. Now he's got one more series. It's unbelievable that'll be it. That we won't hear him, calling
Yeah.
games anymore. Through my whole childhood. From the youngest time I can remember listening to the Knicks, I was listening to Marv Albert. So. All right, let's shift over to baseball. So it's been an interesting week in baseball. Your Yankees pulling off a triple play to end the game. Yes, and I happened to turn to it, and I'm like, they just and Tim and I are talking, and I said, Tim, they just did a triple play. He's like, what? I thought that was just a double play. I was like, no, that was a triple play. And it was unbelievable to end the game. Some thoughts on your Yankees?
Well, I said last week I saw some signs of life. This week they've kind of shown it because yeah, they didn't have just one; they had two triple plays. Um, their earlier one was a really just a horrible base running blunder by the Blue Jays, but either way, it ties an all time record for 3 in a season. But regardless, they swept a very good Blue Jays team and then also came back twice on, well, now the first place A's, but they've been bumped now from first place because of that. Um, I think one of the biggest things is this team doesn't really look at a deficit like a deficit anymore. They were down 4-0 on Saturday and come back and win 7-4. They were down 1-0 in the seventh and they came back. So like their offense is starting to look like a legitimate offense, which it hadn't looked for a long time. But I want to really look at a guy that's gotten a lot of hate, a guy that's gotten a lot of criticism. That's Gary Sanchez.
The big hit.
I'm going to just read these off. Yeah. He had the big hit yesterday, 2-run double to give them the lead. And then obviously the triple play ended the game. But so in his last 7 games, he's batting .333, 3 home runs, 6 RBIs. Last 15, so roughly about a little over 2 weeks, .315, 5 home runs, 12 RBIs. Slugging .704 with an on-base percentage of .362. So like he's after like last year batting well under 200 for most of the early part of this year, batting really low, kind of losing his starting catching job for a second. He's really turned it around. He actually, the last few games, has been batting third, which like I think is what the Yankees had envisioned. You have LeMahieu up top and then Judge, Sanchez, and Stanton. But Sanchez just really hasn't been there for like almost 2 years. So things are looking good. They still have a little bit of an uphill battle. They're still in third place. But also the Rays have struggled recently, so they're only 4 games back in them now. So baseball with the long season, there's still plenty of time.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I'll come back to that in a second, but I'm glad the Yankees are on a roll here. I thought this was one of their better weeks of the year so far. Even though the Twins, who knows what's wrong with them, but for them to take 2 out of 3 from Oakland, that was big. But then going back to it's just so funny how baseball just a difference a week makes. To Tampa Bay is all of a sudden struggling. I didn't realize they traded Willy Adames, by the way. I thought he was kind of the heart of that team, but but they're struggling. And the Angels have all of a sudden gotten hot and they've righted themselves. And I'd love to see some of those guys in the postseason, and I think Joe Madden also being just an outstanding manager, he's finally righting the ship a little bit there. They're finally getting some good pitching and stuff like that. So that's going to be interesting to watch. But, I'll throw the Mets in the category of what a difference a week makes. I mean, they won the first game today, but, losing 3 out of 4 to Washington kind of set them back a little bit. I mean, they had won 3 out of 4 against the Cubs, and then to lose 3 out of 4, it all just kind of balanced itself out. But, I think that's the beauty of baseball, though. The season is so long and you have these roller coasters, and I think that last week was probably a week that just really typified, what a long baseball season is really about.
Yeah. I feel bad for DeGrom, though. I saw his only hit really shouldn't have been a hit.
Yeah. I didn't see it. I was listening to it on the radio because I was still working. But listen, he's just, it's getting ready to be All-Star time. We haven't really talked about that All-Star game too much, but we're starting to get close, right? I'm getting in my inbox, make sure you vote for Lindor and a few and McCann. I'm like, they don't deserve to go this year. But I'd love to see DeGrom. I got 4 players I think have a legit chance of making it. All pitchers though: DeGrom, Walker, Stroman, and Diaz. I think all of them have a legit chance of going. If I would say, probably Walker would be the odd person out, or maybe Stroman. Because I don't think they'll take 4, but first place team.
Yeah.
Yeah. How
Yeah.
about your Yankees? Who do you think you have going?
I would say right now, I'd probably say 3. I would say Cole, Chapman, and Judge.
Okay. Okay.
LeMahieu might get in because of popularity, but really, like, I don't know if anyone stayed healthy long enough. I would love to see a guy like Urshela make it, but I don't think he would. I don't think they would vote for him.
Yeah. He's
But I
clutch
did.
too, man. Yeah. He's
Yeah,
clutch.
he had a big hit. I think it was Friday night, but then they ended up losing. But another interesting Jacob DeGrom stat I saw. This was before today because his ERA is lower. But Garrett Cole, who's had a good year, I don't think he'd start the All-Star game, but like he's got a sub 250 ERA. If Jacob DeGrom gave up 12 straight home runs, he would still have a lower ERA than Garrett Cole.
What?
That's insane.
Wow. That's crazy. I don't know what else to say about DeGrom. I mean, just he gets hurt, and yet he still, goes out there and he doesn't miss a turn. I mean, he's just Superman. I'm wearing a Superman shirt here. He's just, I just hope it keeps up. This is just going to be a historical season, and now at least he's got a decent amount of wins. He's 7-2. So at least he can. That's hard to believe that he has 2 losses, but at least he could. It'd be great to see him win. 15 games or something like that. At least we'll see what happens, but it'll be fun to watch him in the All-Star game. He definitely should start, and that'll bring a lot of eyeballs because people will want to see him strike out. Like 5 or 6 guys if they let him pitch 2 innings. Hopefully they would. All right, so baseball been great. So let's go. We got a great question that I'm going to ask you to go ahead and throw in there, and this will be kind of a fun discussion. So what's a question that you have?
All right, and I can't take credit for this question. This is 100% my wife. Shout out to Shelby.
Shout out to Shelby.
But she had said, because she had seen this, name an athlete who doesn't have a jersey, but if they did, you would totally wear it. So like, because a lot of the sports we talk about is like everyone's got a jersey, whether you're talking like Jacob DeGrom, Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, who has been spectacular this year. But what would be a player that they don't have a jersey, but if they did, you'd wear it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know what made her think of that. That was a great question. So we're talking about sports like boxing, golf, tennis, right? We'd be talking about sports like that. I don't. It's hard, and as Christians, right? We don't judge, and I think he's turned his life around. So I would be on the fence, but I would probably wear a Tiger Woods, jersey. I think that he's tried real hard. I don't know what happened with that car crash thing. I mean, who knows? Nobody knows. Only he knows what happens. He probably was just trying to go too fast, or, I can't imagine what a debilitating back injury is like, where you always have to take, pain medication just to get out of bed, which is probably, his life some days. So I don't want to judge that either, but I think I'd wear a Tiger Woods jersey. How about you? I got a couple more, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say Tiger Woods. Also, because we had just talked about her recently, Naomi Osaka kind of shows support for her. I'd be okay with that.
Good one. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Part of me would say maybe Michael Phelps, but also I feel like he's kind of weird. Didn't he do something weird?
He has, but he has a lot of mental health issues. And so he does commercials now for taking care of your mental health. And so I do admire that he's sort of been like Kevin Love. He's been very open with some of the mental health issues that he struggled with. But yes, I think they found it in that tunnel in Baltimore. I think he was doing like 110 miles an hour through it. And then they found him asleep on the side of the road. I think he had taken like pain medication or something like that. He's had some stuff, yeah. But
Okay.
but I think that's a good one. And you can have the USA, any Olympic folks, you can have the USA, shirt.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go old school boxing, and I don't think there's a current boxer that I'd want to get their jersey. And I grew to love Muhammad Ali, but now knowing the life that George Foreman has had, and and I use him as such an example of how you can change your life and how he changed and he just transformed. I would wear a George Foreman jersey if he had one. I just think that the guy is, definitely a guy to be admired.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Especially now, this is another Olympic one because the Olympics are coming up soon. I would what about Simone Biles? I think
yeah,
I'm saying that right. Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because especially and I think I had seen this. So, oh gosh, whoever that was, it Paul Logan, the YouTuber that boxed Floyd Mayweather recently.
Yeah, something like
He's
that.
gotten
Yeah.
he's gotten like a whole bunch of coverage regarding that. Simone Biles like set some kind of record. I believe she won like 7 US tournaments or something like that, and like nothing. So
Yeah, she,
I'd say her.
as great an athlete as she is, you're right. She doesn't get the credit that you would think, and she carries herself very humbly, and I think that's a good one. I'll go one other kind of Olympic athlete, and that's Bolt. you know,
Yeah.
um, and he's done a great job marketing himself. I mean, he's just got the name to do that anyway. You're a fast runner. Your name is Bolt. Come on.
Yeah.
Um, but I he's a little bit of a showboat, with the lightning bolts and everything. But fans love that stuff these days, especially younger fans. And he represents himself extremely well. He's very brash, a little bit cocky, but I mean, there's been nobody that's as fast as this guy. He's just been unbelievable to watch. So I would, if he had a jersey, I would probably wear it.
Yeah. One other one that I saw, I don't know if I would wear his, but Tony Hawk.
Tony Hawk. Wow. Okay. Okay. Yeah. He's done a lot of stuff. He's the skier, right?
Skateboarder.
He's the skateboarder. Okay. Who's the skier that I'm talking about? That's very famous too.
Guy with the red hair, right?
Yeah, he's got red hair. It'll come to us. But Tony Hawk's a good one. Yeah, he does. He does a lot, man. He's yeah.
And it's interesting because I think he's more known now as like the guy because he's been kind of open about like people not recognizing him in public.
Right.
Like he said one time that
So he was saying that he was upset that people didn't recognize him?
Yeah, he one time he was trying to rent a car and they deleted his application because they thought it was fake. And one time he was going through TSA and he shows his ID. It's like, oh, Tony Hawk, like the skateboarder. It's like, yeah, I wonder what that guy's up to nowadays. And then he says, this. Didn't recognize him at all. So.
All right, I'll give you two real quick from tennis. Roger Federer. Again, not knowing much about tennis, but the guy just dominated the sport for a long time.
Yeah.
I love the way he carries himself. He always speaks highly of other players. Whenever he loses, whenever he wins or loses, he just seems to be very humble. She can be a little bit odd sometimes, but I think one of the greatest athletes of all time is Serena Williams. I just think that she's probably over the years had that combination of strength and speed that is very rare for a female tennis player. And I bet she could beat a lot of the guys. There's no doubt in my mind, that she could beat a lot of the guys. And this is a kind of a Christian thing that we understand as Christians, right? To not judge and everything like that, because we're not in people's shoes, right? Those are some lessons that we learn very early on in our walks. And with Serena, sometimes she's not the most pleasant person in the world, and sometimes she she can snap at reporters. I mean, she had that incident where she snapped at the judge, but we just don't know what it's like to walk in her shoes. As a female Black athlete, that the spotlight is just totally on. And so I got to take all that out and give her a little bit of a pass. But if you look at what she's done on the tennis court, I mean, she still, I think, is one away from the record, I think, of winning these major, tournaments. And so hopefully she'll get that. But she's just been, I mean, she's kind of transcended the sport. You know what I mean? So I would wear one of her jerseys.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. You got anybody else?
No, that's all I got.
Okay. No MMA, right? We're not into the mixed martial arts.
Nah. Some people would probably say Conor McGregor, but
Conor McGregor. Oh my gosh. I try to like him, but I'm sorry.
Nah.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been a lot of fun. And so we've got some big things happening over this next week as we start to get into the conference finals, baseball getting into the tail end of June. Got a few teams that might be in that June swoon that we used to always talk about. So we'll keep an eye on that. Like the Tampa needs to right the ship. Otherwise they're going to find themselves, outside looking up if the Yankees get hot and the Red Sox get hot again. So we'll see what happens. The Cardinals in a little bit of a June swoon. So Brewers have gotten hot. So it's gonna be interesting. So let's get the music going back here, and Kenny, take us out.
All right, this is Kenny Squared End.
Kenny.
With Sports on the Positive Tip. We will see you guys next week.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you later.